In today's report, a wave of outrage has erupted in Dublin, particularly in the residential neighbourhood of Drumcondra, after local residents discovered that the Irish government has been quietly relocating large groups of male migrants into properties in the area, without prior consultation, without transparency, and without offering any public explanation. The news has left many feeling betrayed, as they only became aware of the situation after witnessing buses and vans arriving under the cover of night, unloading people and luggage at various privately owned houses. For years, Ireland's asylum system has relied on a model known as direct provision, a system that has faced widespread criticism from human rights groups over poor living conditions and a lack of privacy. More recently, however, the state has begun using alternative, temporary accommodation arrangements to house those seeking international protection, including guest houses, hotels, and private homes located in residential communities. This emergency approach, introduced in response to both the housing crisis and the rising number of asylum applications, has begun to strain relations between the government and local communities. Footage circulating widely on social media shows scenes captured by residents documenting the arrival of migrants at several properties in Drumcondra. The videos show young men exiting vehicles, carrying suitcases, and entering homes, many of which were recently purchased by private landlords. Locals claim these landlords are profiting from leasing the properties to the state. One businessman, reportedly based in Monaghan, has been identified as having acquired multiple homes in the area for this purpose. Some residents are openly accusing such intermediaries of prioritizing profit over community safety and social cohesion. One of the main concerns raised by locals is the apparent lack of diversity among the new arrivals. According to those on the ground, all of the individuals being relocated are adult males, with no women or children in sight. This has fueled anxiety around the transparency of the process and broader concerns about how migration is being managed. Despite calls for answers, local authorities have yet to issue detailed statements on how many people have been relocated, how long they are expected to remain, or whether any community impact assessments were carried out beforehand. It is important to note that Ireland has seen a significant increase in asylum applications over the past 2 years. According to the Department of Justice, more than 13,000 people sought international protection in 2023 alone, a sharp rise compared to previous years. The situation has become increasingly sensitive following the war in Ukraine and a broader rise in global migration from countries such as Afghanistan, Syria, Somalia, and Pakistan. However, when it comes to non-Ukrainian asylum seekers, public concern has tended to be more pronounced, particularly when relocations are seen as being carried out in secret and without consultation. Across Ireland, including in the capital, a growing number of communities are expressing a sense of disconnect between government policy and the realities faced at a local level. In Drumcondra, for example, residents argue that their voices are being ignored, that no formal consultation process exists, and that any attempt to raise concerns is quickly dismissed as xenophobia, even when those concerns are rooted in a lack of information, planning, and engagement. Another source of tension is the location of these accommodation sites. In Drumcondra, several of the houses used to host asylum seekers are located on streets frequented by families, young schoolgirls, and elderly residents. The concern, in many cases, is not with the presence of migrants themselves, but with the ad hoc and uncoordinated way in which their arrival has been managed. The absence of community support, additional public resources, and clear communication has only intensified the frustration. The government has defended its actions by citing the urgent need to respond to a humanitarian emergency, stating that these individuals are vulnerable and in need of shelter. However, many citizens argue that government decisions appear increasingly detached from life on the ground, where housing shortages are severe, rents are soaring, and public services are already under immense pressure. These events have triggered a national debate around Ireland's migration policy, the role of private landlords in facilitating it, and the limits of public tolerance when decisions are perceived as being imposed from above without local input. The question now being asked is straightforward. How much top-down decision-making can a community endure before it loses its voice and its sense of place? Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you believe the Irish government is handling this situation responsibly? Or do local residents have the right to be informed and involved in decisions affecting their neighborhoods? In other news, Chancellor of the Exchequer Rachel Reeves has attributed April's disappointing GDP figures to the trade policies of former U.S. President Donald Trump, while also defending the recent tax increases introduced by her administration. Speaking to the media, Reeves acknowledged that the latest economic data was indeed underwhelming. However, she maintained that the downturn should not be seen as the result of domestic government decisions, but rather as the consequence of external pressures. She noted that monthly GDP figures tend to be highly volatile and that, while the numbers were disappointing, they were not entirely unexpected given the global context. She placed particular emphasis on the impact of trade barriers implemented during the Trump presidency, stating that these tariffs had a direct effect on commercial activity and manufacturing output, especially throughout April. Reeves also rejected suggestions that the rise in employers' national insurance contributions had hindered economic growth. In her view, the fiscal adjustments were essential to addressing what she described as a structural deficit in the public finances, one inherited from the previous government. She explained that the most recent figures show a slowdown in key areas such as manufacturing and retail, and directly linked this weakness to the external trade conditions in place at the time. Nonetheless, she insisted that the outlook has since improved. As evidence, she pointed to the signing of 3 new trade agreements with the United States, India, and the European Union, which she said would create fresh opportunities for growth and stability in the coming months. The Chancellor described April as a particularly difficult month, shaped by high levels of global uncertainty. When asked whether the increase in national insurance had played a role in the weak data, she firmly denied it, arguing that the policy had already been factored in by the market, unlike the tariffs, which, in her words, introduced unexpected variables into the trading landscape. Reeves strongly defended the government's tax rises, arguing that they were necessary to ensure the proper funding of public services. Upon taking office in July, she said the Labour government inherited a significant budget shortfall which required urgent and responsible decisions. She stressed that the additional revenue has enabled the government to make key investments, many of which were outlined in the most recent spending review. Among the priorities highlighted were increased defense funding, further support for the NHS to reduce waiting times, and a range of initiatives aimed at stimulating economic growth. She also outlined planned investments in transport infrastructure to better connect urban areas, in affordable housing schemes, and in nuclear energy as part of the UK's long-term energy security strategy. While acknowledging the continuing challenges in the economic landscape, Reeves highlighted positive trends in certain areas. Notably, she pointed to sustained real wage growth under the Labour government. According to the Chancellor, in just the first 10 months of Labour's term, wages have risen more than they did during the entire first decade of the previous Conservative administration. Finally, she confirmed that police officers' purchasing power will also see an improvement, with a 2.3% annual pay rise set over the next 3 years, an increase that she noted is above the current rate of inflation. What do you think about Rachel Reeves' statements and the economic measures being rolled out by the Labour government? Let us know in the comments. And if you haven't already, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more updates on UK politics. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.